Dear viewers, the story is different. It's not about shock or revenge. It's about how easily we misjudge what we think we see, and how truth reveals itself to those patient enough to truly observe, told through the eyes of a quiet neighbor who noticed what everyone else missed. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion for stories that challenge our assumptions and remind us that people are always more complicated than our fears about them. Mrs. Chioma Adebayo had lived in Flat 11 of the Sunrise Estate apartment complex for 15 years, long enough to know the rhythm of the building, long enough to recognize the difference between happy noise and troubled noise through the walls, long enough to understand that what people show you is often only half of who they are. She was 58 now, a retired secondary school teacher, widowed for 7 years. Teaching had trained her to observe, to notice which students' sudden silence meant concentration and which meant distress, to see the difference between a child acting out for attention and one crying for help. So when the young couple moved into Flat 12 6 months ago, Mrs. Adebayo did what she always did. She watched. She listened. She waited to understand. Their names were Amara and Obinna. She learned this from the building register and from overhearing their conversations through the shared wall. They were newly married. The shine of their wedding rings and the way they sometimes still giggled together gave that away. Amara was 26, slim and professional looking, always in work clothes. Software developer, Mrs. Adebayo gathered from phone conversations overheard through open windows. Smart girl. Ambitious. Obinna was 29, tall and quiet, with an easy smile when he greeted neighbors in the corridor. He seemed to work from home. Mrs. Adebayo would hear the tap of his keyboard and occasional video calls through the wall during the day. For the first few weeks, they seemed like any other young couple. Normal, unremarkable, the kind of people you'd nod hello to on the stairs and forget about by the time you reach your door. Then, in week 3, Mrs. Adebayo heard the first argument. She was preparing dinner when voices rose through the shared wall. Not the words. The walls were thick enough for that, but the tone. Amara's voice high and stressed. Obinna's lower and steady. Back and forth. Then silence. The next morning, Mrs. Adebayo saw Amara leaving for work. The young woman's head was down, her shoulders tight. She barely managed a greeting when they passed on stairs. By week 4, the other neighbors had noticed too. Mrs. Okafor from Flat 8 was the first to start the whispers. She was the estate's unofficial gossip, not mean-spirited. Just someone who noticed everything and felt obligated to share. That young girl in Flat 12, she said at the estate meeting. She looked so sad these days. Always rushing to work. Coming home so late. I think the husband is giving her trouble. Mr. Zyke from Flat 5 added his observation. I saw her crying in the parking lot last week. On the phone with someone. Probably her mother. These young men today, they don't know how to treat their wives properly. Mrs. Banco from Flat 3 had noticed something else. The husband doesn't even work a proper job. He's always home when she's at the office. What kind of man makes his wife carry all the financial burden like that? Mom Ngozi, the oldest resident, 72, shook her head with the certainty of someone who'd seen everything. I know this pattern. Controlling husband. Keeping her stressed. Not letting her breathe. That girl needs to leave before it gets worse. And the neighbors had evidence to support their conclusions. Amara always looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her smiles, when she managed them at all, never reached past her mouth. She worked long hours. Mrs. Adebayo would hear her return sometimes as late as 10 at night, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. The arguments continued. At least twice a week, voices would rise through the walls. Never loud enough to make out words, but sharp enough to signal conflict. Amara's mother started visiting often. Mrs. Adebayo would see her arrive on Saturday mornings, her face creased with worry, and stay for hours. The kind of visits mothers make when they're concerned about their daughters. Obinna did all the grocery shopping. The neighbors noticed him leaving with empty bags and returning with full ones, always during the day when Amara was at work. It fit their narrative. He controlled the money, made all the decisions about what came into the house. And Amara had stopped attending estate social gatherings, the monthly get-togethers, the weekend casual conversations in the courtyard. She was absent from all of it, withdrawn, isolated. When neighbors tried to reach out, try to offer subtle help, Amara would give tight smiles and say, "I'm fine," too quickly, which everyone knew meant she wasn't. Mrs. Okafor tried once. "My dear, if you ever need to talk, I know a good counselor. Marriage counselors. They can help." "Thank you, Ma, but I'm fine." Mr. Zykes' wife was more direct. "Remember, marriage should make you happy. You don't have to stay where you're suffering. I appreciate your concern, but really I'm okay." Mama Ngozi pulled her aside one evening. "Child, I've lived a long time. I know the signs. You don't have to protect him. There's help available." "Thank you, Ma. I promise I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. Anyone could see that. By month 3, the entire state had concluded the story. Obinna was controlling, possibly abusive husband. Amara was trapped in a difficult marriage, too afraid or too ashamed to ask for help. It was only a matter of time before the situation escalated. The neighbors discussed it in hushed tones during estate meetings. They exchanged knowing looks when Amara passed by. They felt helpless. You couldn't force someone to accept help they insisted they didn't need. Through all of this, Mrs. Adebayo said nothing. She attended the meetings. She heard the gossip. She saw the concern on her neighbors' faces and knew it came from a genuine place. They'd all lived long enough to see real abuse. They were trying to prevent it. But Mrs. Adebayo didn't join their narrative, because while she'd seen everything they'd seen, she'd also noticed other things. Small things, details that appeared insignificant unless you were looking for them. And 30 years of teaching had taught her one fundamental lesson. The loudest story is rarely the truest one. The most obvious explanation is often incomplete. And jumping to conclusions, even with the best intentions, can do more harm than good. So Mrs. Adebayo kept her observations to herself. She wrote them in her journal, a habit from her teaching days when she tracked student patterns to better understand them. She watched. She listened. She waited. Because sometimes the truth reveals itself only to those patient enough to let it emerge. The morning of day 2 began like every other day in Chikwudi's life. The office compound was already awake. Security men at the gate, staff crossing the parking lot with files, engines humming, phones ringing. Chikwudi stepped out of the glass building, adjusted his suit, and walked toward his car. His briefcase hung loosely in his hand. His mind was calm. His phone was in his pocket. Across the road, Adiz moved slowly, her tray balanced on her head. "Buy your fresh, sweet oranges." Then she saw him. Her body reacted instantly. Her chest tightened. Her breath caught. Her heart began to race violently. "No," she whispered. Chikwudi reached his car, pulling out his phone to check messages. Adiz stopped shouting. She gently lowered the tray from her head and placed it on the pavement. The oranges rolled slightly, forgotten. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The knowing crashed over her like a wave. Absolute, terrifying, undeniable. If he gets in that car with that phone, he will die. She saw it, not in images, but in certainty. Death clung to that phone like a shadow. Her mind screamed at her, "Stay silent. Last time you spoke, they almost killed you. Last time you warned someone, they called you witch. But this man would die if she stayed silent." "No," she whispered again. And then she made a choice. She rushed toward him. "Sir." Chikwudi turned, confused. A homeless girl in a dirty dress was running toward him, bare feet slapping pavement. Before he could speak, Adiz grabbed his wrist. "What?" he started. Her fingers closed around the phone in his hand. She pulled it from his grip with sudden, desperate force. "Hey!" Chikwudi snapped. "What do you think you're doing?" People nearby stopped and stared. A security man glanced over, hand moving toward his belt. Adiz held the phone tightly, her hands trembling. "Please," she begged urgently, "please don't use this phone." Chikwudi stared at her, stunned. "Why shouldn't I use my own phone?" She shook her head, panic rising in her eyes. "Just don't. Please." "That's not an answer," Chikwudi said sharply. "Why?" Adiz opened her mouth, closed it. How could she explain without sounding insane? Without being called which again, Chakotay stepped closer, his voice hardening. You grabbed me in public. You took my property. Now tell me why. Her grip tightened on the phone. Please, she repeated, her voice cracking. Just trust me. Trust you? How? Who are you? Why are you doing this? Tears formed in her eyes. If you use it, she said, barely above a whisper, something terrible will happen. What terrible thing? Silence. A crowd was gathering now. People slowing, watching, whispering. Answer me, Chakotay said slowly. Adiz couldn't speak. The answer, I see death, I have visions, would get her killed. They'd call her witch. They'd hurt her. Maybe worse. Please, she whispered again. Just don't use it. Chakotay stared at the phone in her hand, then at her face. The fear in her eyes was real. Genuine. Desperate. He was a businessman. Logical. He didn't believe in superstition. But he was also a man who'd survived by trusting his instincts. And his instinct said, this girl is terrified for you, not of you. How do you know? He asked quietly. Adiz swallowed hard. The truth sat heavy in her chest, but she couldn't say it. Not here. Not with this crowd. The air between them felt tight, dangerous, expectant. Security was moving closer now. Sir, should we? Chakotay raised a hand, stopping them. He looked at his empty hand where the phone had been, then back at Adiz's tear-streaked face. Something in her eyes made him pause, made him think. Come with me, he said finally. We need to talk. Adiz's eyes widened in shock. Sir, the security man asked, confused. Let her through, Chakotay said. She's with me? He turned and walked toward the building. Adiz stood frozen for a moment, clutching his phone, unable to believe what just happened. Then she followed, leaving her tray of oranges abandoned on the pavement. Behind her, the crowd whispered and pointed. Inside the glass tower, Chakotay led her to his private office. Adiz had never been inside a building like this. Expensive carpet under her dirty bare feet, air conditioning making her shiver, glass and steel everywhere. Chakotay sat behind his desk. Sit. She was too scared to sit. She stood, clutching his phone like a lifeline. Tell me everything. Chakotay said calmly, Why did you grab my phone? Adiz struggled. How to explain the unexplainable? Sometimes, she started, her voice barely audible. Sometimes I know things. I feel things. What things? When something very bad will happen. I feel it, like a warning. Chakotay leaned forward slightly. And you felt something about my phone? Yes. Tears streamed down her face now. If you keep using it, something terrible will happen. Very soon. Do you know how that sounds? I know. Adiz cried. I know it sounds crazy, but I've been right before. And then she told him about the woman who died, about the crowd that turned on her, about being chased, beaten, called witch. Since that day, I stay silent, she said. I never warn anyone, because they hurt me when I speak. She looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. But today I saw you and I knew. If I stayed silent, you would die. So I grabbed your phone. Even though they might call me witch again. Even though you might hurt me too. Chakotay sat very still. He studied her face, dirty, homeless, terrified. She had nothing to gain from lying. If she wanted money, she'd have sold the phone, not warned him. If she was a scammer, she'd have a better story. She was genuinely terrified and trying to save him. He made a choice. I believe you. Adiz's eyes widened in shock. No one had ever believed her before. But I need to understand, Chakotay continued. What exactly did you feel? Adiz whispered one word. Death. The office door opened. Emeka walked in. He saw Adiz, dirty orange seller, standing in Chakotay's office. He saw Chakotay without his phone. For just a moment, panic flashed across Emeka's face. Then he masked it. Boss, he said carefully. What's going on? Who is this? Chakotay looked at his oldest friend. This woman just saved my life. Maybe. Emeka forced a laugh. Saved your life? From what? Chakotay held up the phone. From this, she says it's dangerous. Emika's eyes locked onto the phone, the cursed object. That's ridiculous. It's just a phone. But Chakotay was watching Emika's face carefully now, watching the way his eyes tracked the phone, watching the tension in his jaw. Is it? Chakotay asked quietly, and in that moment, something clicked. A memory. Emika had borrowed this phone just 3 days ago, returned it quickly, insisted Chakotay keep using it. Emika, who'd been different lately, distant, tense, watching him with something Chakotay couldn't name. Emika, who'd stood in his shadow at that dinner party. Chakotay's business instincts, the same instincts that had made him a billionaire, kicked in. Something was very wrong, and it involved his best friend. She grabbed his phone in public and begged him not to use it. A homeless orange seller risking everything to save a billionaire she doesn't know. And now Emika just walked in and saw the cursed phone in Chakotay's hand. The panic on his face gave him away. Chakotay is starting to suspect his best friend. Have you ever had a gut feeling that saved your life or someone else's? Did people believe you or call you crazy? Share your story in the comments. If you're desperate to know if Chakotay discovers the truth about the curse, smash that like button and subscribe to African Tales by Zion for more stories about courage, betrayal, and supernatural justice. Next chapter reveals everything. You can't miss this. After Emika left the office, making excuses about meetings, Chakotay sat alone with the D's for a long moment. Stay here, he said finally. I need to investigate something. He called his personal tech expert. Check this phone. Tell me if there's anything unusual about it. 2 hours later, the expert returned, confusion on his face. Electronically? Nothing wrong. But... He hesitated. But what? There's something on it. Not technology. Something else. He pointed to faint marks on the case. These look like ritual materials. And there's a smell. Incense. Herbs. Chakotay's jaw tightened. Where would someone take a phone to do that? The expert looked uncomfortable. A shrine, sir. This phone has been to a shrine. Chakotay dismissed him and called Emika back to the office. When Emika arrived, the phone sat on the desk between them. When you borrowed my phone, Chakotay asked slowly, where did you take it? Emika's face remained neutral. Just around. Why? Did you take it anywhere specific? Anywhere unusual? What are you accusing me of? I'm not accusing. I'm asking. Emika stood abruptly. We've been friends since childhood, and you believe some street girl over me? I haven't said what I believe yet. Emika's face hardened. This is insulting. He stormed toward the door. Emika. He stopped but didn't turn around. I'm going to find out the truth, Chakotay said quietly, with or without your help. Emika left without another word. Adiz, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner where Chakotay had told her to wait, suddenly gasped. Her body went rigid. Her eyes rolled back slightly. Chakotay rushed to her side. What? What's happening? When she opened her eyes, tears streamed down her face. I saw him, she whispered. Your friend. I saw him take your phone to a dark place. An old man. Candles. Words I couldn't hear. Things being done to your phone. You saw this? When? Just now. Sometimes I see things that already happened. When I touch objects. When I'm near people involved. Chakotay believed her. He didn't understand it, but he believed her. He hired a private investigator that afternoon. Follow Emika's movements from 3 days ago. I want to know everywhere he went. 24 hours later, the investigator returned with a report and photographs. Your business partner drove to a remote area outside Lagos 3 nights ago. He visited this place. He showed a photo of a decrepit building hidden in trees. A shrine, known for dark practices. More photos. Emika entering the shrine. Emika leaving hours later. He paid the native doctor 20 million naira, the investigator said, for a curse, designed to kill someone through an object they use daily. A phone. Chakotay felt ice spread through his chest. How do you know this? I have sources. And the investigator hesitated. I brought the native doctor here. He's waiting outside. He's willing to talk. The native doctor was old, his eyes sharp and knowing. He sat across from Chakotay, without fear. You placed a curse on my phone. I performed the ritual your friend paid for. The curse was set to activate fully on the third day. Today is the second day. What would have happened tomorrow? You would have died. It would have looked like a heart attack. Natural, untraceable. Chakotay's hands clenched into fists. But the girl took my phone. What happens now? The doctor's face darkened. When the object leaves the intended victim's possession before the curse completes, the charm breaks. And I warned your friend. If the charm breaks, his mind breaks with it. What does that mean? Madness. Slowly at first, then completely. The darkness he tried to send to you will consume him instead. Chakotay called an emergency meeting. All senior staff. Emeka was required to attend. When everyone was assembled, Chakotay played the investigator's recordings, showed the photographs, brought in the native doctor who confirmed everything. Emeka sat silent, his face drained of color. Why? Chakotay asked, his voice broken. I gave you everything. Why did you try to kill me? Emeka finally spoke, his voice hollow. Because you have everything. Your name, your fame, your life. I stood beside you and became invisible. I made you my partner. You share in everything. I share in your shadow. Emeka shouted, do you know what it's like? Standing in rooms where everyone looks at you and looks through me? Being introduced as Chakotay's business partner and watching smiles die. So you tried to murder me? Emeka laughed bitterly. I wanted what should have been mine. I stopped being your brother the day you stopped seeing me. The room was silent. Get him out of here, Chakotay said quietly. As security escorted Emeka out, Adiz watched from the back of the room. She felt a wave of pity for the man who let jealousy destroy him. Within 3 days, exactly as the native doctor predicted, Emeka began to deteriorate. He became paranoid, started hearing voices, seeing things that weren't there. The curse he'd placed was consuming him from the inside. Chakotay visited him once in the psychiatric facility where he'd been committed. Emeka stared at him with empty eyes, not recognizing the friend he'd tried to kill. Is there a cure? Chakotay asked the doctor. No, he made his choice. Now he lives with the consequences. Chakotay left, carrying the weight of a friendship that had died long before the curse ever began. After Emeka's breakdown became public knowledge, Chakotay spent days thinking about everything that had happened. His best friend had tried to kill him. A homeless girl had saved his life. He called Adiz back to his office. She came nervously, still wearing the same faded dress, still barefoot. Sit, he said gently this time. She sat on the edge of the chair, hands folded in her lap. You saved my life, Chakotay said. You risked being called a witch again. You risked everything to warn a stranger. Why? Adiz looked at her hands. Because staying silent was wrong. Last time I spoke, I was punished, but I couldn't let you die just to protect myself. You have nowhere to live, right? She shook her head silently. What if I told you I want to help you? That I want to give you a chance at a different life? Her eyes widened. Sir, I don't need. Yes, you do. And I owe you. Not just my life, but something more. He leaned forward. I'm giving you a choice. I can give you money, help you start a business. Or you can work for me. I'll give you a job, a place to live, education. A real chance. Tears filled her eyes. Why would you do this? Because you saw me as a person worth saving. Not as a billionaire. Not as an opportunity. Just as someone in danger who needed help. He smiled. That's rare and valuable. Adiz could barely speak. I accept the job, the chance. Within a week, Chakotay had arranged everything. A small apartment, nothing fancy, but clean, safe, with a real bed, clothes that actually fit. A job in his company starting simple, with training. The night she moved into her apartment, Adiz stood in the middle of the empty living room and cried. For the first time in years, she had walls around her, a door that locked, A bed that wasn't concrete. She had a home. Months passed. Adiz transformed. She took night classes, finished her education. She worked hard, learned quickly, and never forgot where she came from. Chakoti watched her growth with something like pride. He made her his community outreach director. You understand the people I'm building for, he told her. You've lived their struggle. Use that. She created programs for street vendors, housing assistance for the homeless, job training for forgotten youth. She used her position to lift others the way Chakoti had lifted her. But something else was developing too, something neither of them had expected. Adiz's gift, the curse she'd hated, became invaluable in business. Several times, she warned Chakoti about deals that felt wrong. I just sensed something dark about this, she'd say. At first, he investigated to make her feel heard. But every time, he discovered she was right. Hidden debts, fraudulent partners, contracts with dangerous clauses. Her intuition saved him millions. Your gift isn't a curse, he told her one evening. It's exactly what it sounds like. A gift. I used to hate it, she admitted. But now, maybe it happened for a reason. Maybe I was meant to save you, so you could save me, so together we could save others. 1 year became 2. Friendship deepened into something more. Mutual respect became affection. Affection became love. Neither of them rushed it. Both had been hurt, him by betrayal, her by rejection. They built trust slowly, carefully. On a quiet evening 2 years after the day she grabbed his phone, Chakoti proposed, not in a restaurant or a public place, but in her small apartment where everything had started. You grabbed my phone to save my life, he said, but you gave me something more. You gave me back my faith in people, in trust, in goodness. Adiz smiled through tears. You gave me a life, a home, a purpose. No, he said, we gave each other those things. Together, she said yes. From cursed to blessed, the curse Emeka placed backfired and destroyed his own mind. He's in a psychiatric facility now, lost in madness. Meanwhile, Adiz went from homeless orange seller to community outreach director, saving other homeless people. Her curse became a gift that saved Chakoti's business. And now he just proposed. Have you ever seen someone's jealousy destroy them? Or someone's gift turn their life around completely? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe that what you send out comes back to you, good or bad, like this video and subscribe to African Tales by Zion for more stories about karma, redemption, and love. One final chapter shows their legacy. Don't miss it. The wedding was simple. Not because they couldn't afford grand, but because they both learned that what matters happens in hearts, not in spectacle. Adiz wore white, the first truly beautiful thing she'd ever owned. Chakoti wore a suit and a smile that hadn't left his face in weeks. As they exchanged vows, Adiz thought about the day she grabbed his phone. How terrified she'd been. How certain she was that speaking up would destroy her. I grabbed your phone that day because I saw death, she told him during their private moment before the ceremony. Today I see life. Our life. Chakoti took her hands. You grabbed more than my phone. You grabbed my future. And I'll never let go. They'd built a life together. Chakoti continued growing his real estate empire, but with a different focus now. Every development included affordable housing. Every project created jobs for people like Adiz used to be. Together, they founded Second Chances, a foundation dedicated to helping homeless people, street vendors, and forgotten youth. Adiz ran it personally. She knew every struggle, every fear, every desperate calculation of whether today's money would buy food or tomorrow's safety. Every person who came through their doors, she told them the same thing. Someone once looked past my dirty dress and saw my worth. Today I see yours. The foundation grew. Within 5 years, they'd housed over 300 people, given jobs to 500 more, sent 73 kids to school who'd never imagined education was possible. Adiz's gift continued to be valuable. She became known as the woman with perfect instincts. When she said a deal felt wrong, Chakoti listened. When she said a person was trustworthy, he believed her. How do you know? People asked. She smiled. I just feel it. And I've learned to trust what I feel. The curse that had made her a target became the gift that made her indispensable. Years passed. The homeless girl who'd slept on concrete now slept in a beautiful home. The billionaire who'd almost died now lived with purpose beyond profit. One afternoon, Adiz was walking to the foundation's new building, a shelter and training center they just opened, when she saw a young girl outside. Dirty dress, bare feet, a tray of oranges balanced on her head. Calling out to passers-by who ignored her, Adiz stopped. The girl looked exactly like she had once looked. Invisible, forgotten, desperate. She walked over and bent down. "Hello, what's your name?" The girl looked up, startled. "Nobody talks to me, Ma. I'm talking to you, and I'm listening." The girl's eyes filled with tears at the simple kindness. Adiz smiled gently. "Would you like to come inside? I have a story to tell you." "What story, Ma?" "About how an orange seller saved a billionaire's life, and how he saved hers right back." She extended her hand. The girl hesitated, then took it. As they walked into the building together, Adiz thought about the moment that had changed everything. The moment she'd chosen to speak instead of staying silent. The moment she grabbed a stranger's phone and changed both their lives forever. Inside, dozens of people worked and learned and rebuilt their lives. Former street vendors now ran small businesses. Former homeless youth now attended university. Former invisible people now had names, voices, futures. And in the center of it all stood Adiz and Chiquiti. Two people who'd saved each other and now spent every day saving others. That evening, back at home, Chiquiti found Adiz standing by the window, looking out at the city. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her. "About how close we both came to missing this. If I'd stayed silent that day, you'd be dead. If you hadn't believed me, I'd still be on the streets. But you didn't stay silent. And I did believe you." She turned to face him. "Do you ever think about Emeka?" Chiquiti was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. I visited him last month. He still doesn't recognize me. The doctors say he never will." "Do you forgive him?" "I pity him. He wanted what I had so badly that he destroyed himself trying to take it. He forgot the most important truth." "What's that?" "That blessings can't be stolen. They can only be received. And curses sent out return to the sender." Adiz nodded. "His jealousy destroyed him, just like my silence almost destroyed me. But you broke your silence, and that saved us both." Years later, when people asked Adiz how she'd gone from homeless to successful, she always told the truth. "I grabbed a billionaire's phone to save his life, and in doing so, I saved my own." When they asked Chiquiti why he'd married a former street vendor, he smiled. "Because she saw death coming for me and refused to stay silent. Because she risked everything to save a stranger. Because she showed me that value isn't measured in money, but in character." The cursed phone sat in a locked display case in their home, a reminder of how close they had come to missing each other. Beside it sat a single orange, preserved, a symbol of where Adiz had come from and what she'd overcome. Two objects. Two stories. One lesson. Sometimes the people's society ignores carry the wisdom that saves lives. Sometimes the gifts we think are curses are actually our greatest blessings. And sometimes one act of courage changes everything. Asterisk, from sleeping on concrete to running a foundation. From cursed gift to blessing that saves lives. Adiz and Chiquiti didn't just save each other. They're now saving hundreds of homeless people and giving them second chances. Meanwhile, Emeka's jealousy destroyed him. He's permanently lost in madness, exactly what he tried to send to Chiquiti. What's your biggest lesson from this story? Trust your intuition, even when others don't believe you. What you send out returns to you. One act of courage can change everything. The people society ignores may save your life. Share your takeaway in the comments. If this story gave you chills, taught you something, or made you believe in divine timing, smash that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear about second chances and karma. And subscribe to African Tales by Zion with notifications on for more stories where courage wins, curses backfire, and love transforms lives. Remember, Your gift might look like a curse until you use it to save someone. Your instincts might sound crazy until they save a life. And the person you help today might become your greatest blessing tomorrow. Thank you for watching. May you have the courage to speak when silence is easier, and may your gifts, however strange, save the lives they're meant to save.